go. Wow. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Mac and Jack Sports Show as we start your day off on Northeast Streaming Sports Thursday through Sunday, 8 to 10 a.m. I'm your host, Mac, with your co-host, Hall of Fame legendary boxing writer Jack Hirsch, bringing you Sports Breakfast live on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch. Today is our Saturday debate show, and as on almost every Saturday, we're joined by our guest co-host, Dr. Paul Semendinger, on the Start Spreading the News blog and also on the Start Spreading the News Yankee show every Monday night at 9 p.m. right after Jack's boxing show, Glove Fist, at 7 p.m. on Monday. So we got both shows, Monday shows, represented here today. How you guys doing today?
You're doing great. Thank you.
Fellas.
Excellent. So before we get into our debate, I want to take time to congratulate the Boston Red Sox on an unbelievable season that no one picked to not only win 90 games this year, but pretty much picked them to finish fourth. That the number one wild card that they made that was reserved for the Yankees and the Blue Jays, they beat both of those out. No one thought they'd beat the Rays. They beat the Rays, and they lost 6 in Game 6 to a highly talented, experienced team, the Houston Astros. They gave the fans a lot of a hell of a season anyway. And, even though we're all Yankee fans here, I know we all love baseball too. And really, Boston surpassed all the expectations this year. So congratulations to them, the Boston Red Sox this year.
Mac, you got to congratulate the Houston Astros. At least say congratulations.
Well, we will get to that. We'll get to that next. But, we cover the Northeast here, Jack. And, we got to talk about the Northeast teams first, especially when they do something. Houston was one of the favorites, Jack, right? They were one of the favorites to go to. Boston wasn't a favorite, not even close. So that's why I congratulate them. And
congratulations to you, Mac. You were high in Boston all year, and you thought they were going to, at the very worst, hang in playoff contention till the very end, and you gave them an excellent chance making the playoffs. And I said they'd be cooked in July. So kudos to you. You were right. I was wrong.
Yeah, it happens, Jeff. But, listen, the Braves are still in there. I picked the Houston Astros to go to the World Series. So, of course, congratulations to them to making me look like I know what I'm talking about, right? So they won, of course, last night's game very handedly. Boston's offense could only manage 2 hits. Their rookie pitcher for Houston goes 5 2/3 innings, only giving up 1 hit, 1 walk, and striking out 7. So Luis Garcia gives way to the bullpen, and Houston bullpen does its job. Boston just couldn't hit the ball anymore. They weren't hitting anywhere close to where they were in the beginning of the series. Maybe they were pressing too hard. I think you've got to appreciate the job that Cora did, bringing that team back. I think he's manager of the year this year, in my opinion anyway, taking that team that far. So congratulations to both teams. Boston, don't feel bad. Listen, you guys gave it a heck of a try, and no one expected it. And tonight, we got game 6 of the Braves against the Dodgers. Max Scherzer is not pitching tonight. He has a arm fatigue, so they're not sure whether they're going to go by bullpen again today, and should give the Braves a chance of winning. Without Scherzer there, not at his best, the Braves, I think their odds have increased to win. Don't you think so?
Well, I'll tell you, if the Braves lose today, they're going to be haunted by what happened last year. It's already on their mind where they blew a 3-1 lead and lost in 7 to the Dodgers by 1 run in the decisive 7th game. And the Dodgers went on to win the championship. But I'll tell you guys, what's your opinion of what would be a more fun World Series? And I think it's obvious. The Dodgers Astros revisited would be a lot more fun than the Braves and the Astros.
I got to agree, 100%.
Yeah, I would agree with you there too, Jack. The Dodgers and the Astros, of course, you got a very experienced, talented team against the powerhouse. That would be a great series. But they did say now for the Dodgers, you're going to see Price pitching. He hasn't pitched in a few weeks of competitive games, inning anyway. So if Price can do what he did a long time ago, maybe the Dodgers do win tonight. We'll see what happens. It should be very interesting.
David Price does an example of when teams get criticized. Well, why don't you go out and get pitching? You stretch your budget and you make a mistake. David Price was an ace on the Boston Red Sox staff. The Dodgers gave him like a long-term deal. I think something like 7 years, $31 million a year. He hasn't been worth it. He's been good at times, but he's an example when you need pitching badly, the way teams are going to get desperate. And there's got to be a certain wiseness in how you spend your money. And the Dodgers have money to burn, so they could absorb it. But certain teams only have the money for one big buy. And the likes of a David Price become very tempting, and teams are going to have to resist that type of free agent signing.
Right? Wasn't I just checked? I'm pretty certain he went to the Dodgers as a salary dump. He was. The Red Sox had signed him. Your point is correct.
Right.
The Red Sox signed him to this big deal.
Yeah.
So I mean, hey, listen, maybe he can recapture some of his old stuff. We'll see what happens. Should be an interesting game, but I think the Braves have probably a good shot not going against a healthy Max Scherzer than they would going up against a bullpen committee pitching today. So we'll see what happens tonight. I think it's at 9 p.m. if I'm not mistaken. But folks, what you waited for, what we do here every Saturday, and we have a lot of fun doing it too.
Anything you can do, I can do better. I can do anything better than you.
No, you can't.
Yes, I can.
No, you can't.
Yes, I can.
No, you can't.
Yes, I can. Yes, I can.
Anything you can be, I can be greater.
So, folks, we're going to start off the Mac and Jack debate show with our first topic. And, even though this is not one of my fortes, so I won't have a lot to say about that. I'll have a few things to say after the two marathoners are done here. But the debate is I want to get this right, Jack. What is the hardest or what is the greatest marathon, Boston or New York? How are we phrasing this?
Public perception. I mean, what would the average person who wasn't even a runner, let's say, for example, it wouldn't even consider running a marathon, and you ask them, what is the most famous marathon in the world? And let's say they don't live in that particular city. I think the Boston Marathon comes in. I'm eliminating the Olympic Marathon once every 4 years. And Doc is going to be running in a couple of weeks the New York City Marathon. So I don't know what his answer is going to be, but he has to be a little partial to that marathon. But that doesn't mean that's going to be his answer, and I have no idea what you might think. The Boston Marathon began in 1897, 1 year after the Olympics began in 1896. It was a takeoff of the Olympics, and it became so famous. And the New York City Marathon didn't even come into existence until 1970, and they didn't even run the 5 boroughs until 1976. I mean, the first winner of the New York City Marathon was a guy, Gary Mercury, if that's the way you pronounce his name. I know how to spell it. I just can't pronounce it well. But they had something like 200 runners in the park that day, and he didn't even know he was going to run it. He was with his family in Central Park. He was a runner, and he ran the race. And then the race became so much of a people's race in New York. But Boston always was the real runner's race. and the famous race. And listen, I can't name one part of the New York City Marathon, one segment of the race that's famous with the public. But the Boston Marathon, I could say Heartbreak Hill. Heartbreak Hill is famous. They even make movies, as songs, as slogans after that. Heartbreak Hill, you hit a point in the race where you're running uphill, and the myth is, or maybe it's a reality, that runners drop out of the race because it's so steep. But it's interesting that Bill Rogers, who won both races 4 times, I went to see him speak in 1980 at a seminar sponsored by the New York Row Runners Club. And they asked him which was the harder course to run. And he said New York is a harder course to run than Boston, okay, because of everything involved. And the tradition of the Boston Marathon, makes it the great of the two. And I'm just going to, in closing on this for now, before I turn it over to Doc, I'll use the words of Fred Lebow. He was the famous race director of the New York City Marathon. After Rosie Ruiz cheated in the race in 1980, I believe it was, and she for those who don't know, Rosie Ruiz ducked onto the course. She wasn't a legitimate runner, finished the race and faked it like she won. And then during the post-race ceremony, they were treating her like the winner and all. Fred Lebow found out she qualified for the Boston race. You have to qualify for Boston. Man, they are tough. They even have qualifying times for 80-year-old men, and I think it's maybe a little under 10 minutes. It's brutal, those things. But when they said to Fred Lebow, she qualified for Boston in your race, he went crazy. And he said to cheat during the New York City Marathon is terrible, but to cheat in Boston, the greatest marathon of all, is unthinkable. Use something to paraphrase. So the Boston Marathon, that to me has to, has been, is, in all due respect to New York, which I ran 8 times, by the way, and never could qualify for Boston. The Boston Marathon's the holy grail of marathons.
Yeah, I can't disagree with really anything you're saying. This will be my 8th New York. This will be my 22nd overall, and I've never qualified for Boston. It's what they did too is I was getting close. I think they were watching me and they didn't want me up in Boston or something. They actually at some point when in my early 40s or so, they made it harder to get in. They made the qualifying times much more challenging. So, New York, there's nothing like the New York Marathon. That was my first marathon. It was a life-changing event that was just amazing, right? I never had run a marathon. I'd never even run like 10 miles before I even started training for it. But it was one of those things like, oh, you have to do the New York City Marathon. So I did it. And again, there was nothing like it. You run for 26 miles through every borough of New York City, and people are cheering, and you feel like you're a celebrity. You feel like you're a sports star. And for anyone who ever had dreams of being an athlete, as we all did, it was like the closest you could ever come. And one of the great things about all of these races is you're running the exact same course at basically the exact same time, though you're slower than the elite people, right? They head up before you and they're running, and then you're just following them. And so, New York has the idea, it's magnificent. There's 50,000 people. I'm not sure how many are running it this year. One of them is me, but 50,000 people, millions of people lining the streets. It's New York. It's big. It's grandiose. It's fun. It's exciting. There's bands. There's music. But, like Boston's the major leagues, because you can't get into Boston. I mean, there's always the charities, but I don't consider that getting into Boston. You can't get into Boston as just a regular runner unless you qualify. And qualifying, as we said, is extremely difficult. The standards are very high. And if you don't qualify for the standard, you're not going to run the Boston Marathon. Boston's also run in the spring, typically. And it's sort of like one of those things that starts to usher in summer with Patriots Day in Boston. It becomes a big deal. Obviously, they moved it this year. But And again, I agree with you too. I don't think New York is anything that would resemble Heartbreak Hill. Now, if you talk to runners like who've run the race, they'll tell you coming off the Queensboro Bridge is one of the great moments. And you know, I'm almost reluctant to build it up too much if anybody's not done it. But when you're running on the Queensboro Bridge, which is higher in the elevation is much more than anybody can imagine. It's like Heartbreak Hill. But as you're going up this hill, it's quiet. You're on the bridge. There's no sound. There's no spectators. It's just tap, 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 runners. And then all of a sudden you come off the bridge and you're on First Avenue. And there's this wall of sound that's unlike anything you can imagine. It almost brings tears to my eyes. And it's just awesome. But if you're a runner and you've experienced it, you know what it is. But if you talk to someone who has never run the New York City Marathon, you say, oh, First Ave, they're not going to say like, what's that? What does that mean? But if you mention Heartbreak Hill, they'll say, oh, yeah, I've heard about Heartbreak Hill. That's in the Boston Marathon. So, you know, I'm partial to New York. It is my favorite marathon. I've run lots of marathons in lots of different places. New York is New York.
What are the other places? I'm curious that you've run marathons.
Oh my goodness! The big ones. I did Chicago. That's
the small ones too. Yeah. I mean,
all right. So I run a bunch of small ones, like in Pennsylvania, like the Lehigh Valley Marathon, the Poconos Marathon. I did Philadelphia. I did Marine Corps. I did Disney twice. New Jersey Marathon a couple times.
Chicago is become famous enough that could actually enter the discussion. Chicago and the London marathons. So if we want,
they're the majors, right? They're the marathon
right.
majors.
If we wanted to expand this discussion, the most famous of all, because I mean, Chicago, you could rate him as a contender for sure.
It was great. Chicago was awesome.
Yeah, London is a contender.
And of course, we're going to say the greatest marathon of all. You can't discount Athens, right? Because that's sort of like the home of the marathon, the whole thing. So in short, the more prestigious of the two is Boston. The one that I love the most, obviously, is New York. We're all from the New York area, and there's something super special about New York, and I just cannot wait to be there in 2 weeks. It's going to be awesome.
Well, you know, guys, I'm not a marathon guy at all. I used to run to stay in shape when I was in the service, and when I played sports. I was more of a sprinter than a runner. I did experience that high you get after so many miles where all of a sudden you're not breathing heavy anymore and you're just chugging along. I think I felt that once. So I think I was right around the 10-mile mark or something where I wasn't tired anymore. So I did experience that once. But there are a few marathons that I think are worth mentioning that maybe people don't know about it. One is the Loch Ness Lake Marathon. Now, they actually put on almost 200 pounds of underwater gear, and they run through the Loch Ness Lake. And one guy made it 40 miles, guys. So that's something that I might be interested in running. There's also one in the North Pole. The North Pole is a 40-mile marathon with below 0 degrees, and I think 50 runners ran that one year. There's also a South African marathon that actually runs through Lion Country, where I guess you got to be a sprinter sometimes too also. So that's pretty interesting. I think that may be something Doc might want to look into. My favorite one of all of them is the Rock and Roll Las Vegas Marathon, where hundreds of Elvis impersonators in their blue suede shoes run a marathon. And, of course, the winner is all shook up and the losers spend the night at the Heartbreak Hotel. So that's my experience in marathons. I just thought I'd throw in a few marathons that people really may not know of. So
that's a Disney World one also. I know
did that twice.
You did that. Was that, how was the course? I mean, when you're doing the race, you can only appreciate the scenery so much because you're very self-absorbed into how you're feeling and strategizing and just gutting it out. But how were you able to enjoy that course at all, Disney World?
Yeah. I mean, if you're doing Disney, and of course I always tried to run as fast as I could, but Disney is more of you're going there to have fun. So it's interesting though, because you run through all the parks, but then you run on the roads between the parks. So it's sort of like you get this rush. We're in the Magic, or you start in Epcot. Like, we're in Epcot. Okay, then you're on the road to the Magic Kingdom. Then you're in the Magic Kingdom. Wow, that's cool. But then you're on the road, I guess, to whatever the next one was, which I think it was. I forget what's the one, like that's the jungle or whatever they call that
Yeah,
thing.
yeah,
I think that was the next one.
Animal Kingdom.
Animal Kingdom. I think that was the next one. But when you get there's all the characters around, and the characters are giving you high fives, and people stop and they take their picture with the characters. So it's less of a competitive race. It's more you're in Disney World and you're having fun.
I could tell you a shorter race that you guys would have gotten a big kick out of. It was Run to Home Plate. I ran that. You start in the parking lot of Shea Stadium, and you finish the race, and you run and touch home plate. And I remember leaving Shea Stadium through the outfield. I stopped in the outfield, and of course I'm fantasizing jumping for imaginary balls hit. And I'm thinking, how do these guys catch it? It's so far away, the outfield from home plate. The instincts that these outfielders have to have as soon as the ball comes off the bat. I mean, and I told myself right then, that's the difference between major leaguers and not just a skill level of catching the ball, but the instinct, the split-second reaction to know whether to go back, go forward, or what. And I didn't have that. I didn't have that instinct myself. But that's the difference why some guys make the big leagues and some don't. But it was kind of cool to be in the outfield, jumping by the fence, imagining whether I'm catching a ball there.
That's awesome.
So our next topic, guys, is would Billy Martin, Lou DeRozier, I guess you could even throw Earl Weaver in there if you wanted, be as confrontational if they managed during the instant replay era? And I get to go first. And it's an easy answer for me. DeRozier, I'm not too sure of. I never really watched DeRozier, but I know with Martin and Weaver, there's no doubt Billy Martin would be. I think Billy Martin would be confrontational with Moses, Jesus Christ, Sister Teresa, and Gandhi. I think that's that's the type of attitude he has. He's a very confrontational a man, and that's what Billy Martin was: intense, confrontational. His most important thing in his life at the time was baseball and winning at baseball. The instant replay, half the time, is non-conclusive. So Billy Martin would probably get more aggravated about that. The umpire's strike zone isn't universal, and that's mainly where you would argue. Not so much the throwouts and the steals. It's more about balls and strikes. I mean, I would see them get upset about. And protecting players. If the players got in trouble, the umpires, of course, Martin would be in front of the player, getting the player away from him and take it to the umpire. So, I mean, we see managers get kicked out today, and they're nowhere close to confrontational as Billy Martin or Earl Weaver or DeRozier were. I think maybe umpires today have it easier because managers are a little bit more laid back. I think you get used to certain things, and managers are not as aggressive as they were back then, and they're not as old school. And I just can imagine being an umpire calling a game for one of these three managers. They must have dreaded that. I mean, when they go to play the Yankees or the Orioles, they must have just. They looked at the schedule and I imagine they dreaded that. I mean, can you imagine being an umpire and Billy Martin walks out to make the pitching change and you're going to have to go there and tell him it's enough time and you're going to get it. And I think maybe there's a psychological edge back then that maybe the managers don't take advantage of, right? I mean, if you know that the manager's going to come flying out of that dugout and it's going to challenge you all the time, maybe he goes a little bit easier on your team. Maybe that close call he gives to you that they don't do today. I imagine, Jack and Doc, that Billy Manager wouldn't be throwing bases on the field today. He'd be throwing cameras on the field today and stopping on them. So I really think it all has to do with personality. And if you're going to put Billy Martin the way he is or was in today's era, unless he grew up during this era, Billy Martin, Earl Weaver, DeRozier would be the same guy. Wouldn't matter.
You make excellent points that it's pretty hard for me to argue against it. But the nature of the game has changed. Think of the times that Billy Martin kicked dirt on an umpire. If he did that today, he wouldn't just be kicked out for one game. It would be a multiple game suspension. And Billy Martin, he was a smart man despite his emotions. And he would think, I don't want to be kicked out for 4 or 5 games. So he's less likely to kick dirt on an umpire. But you make a great point. Umpires still get kicked out today. But umpires, some managers get kicked out today. Managers sometimes plan to get kicked out. They want to, light a fuse under their team. They're doing it deliberately. So they'll find any petty reason to argue with an umpire, to get kicked out, to show a little spark and hope their team picks up on it. But with that said, what is Billy Martin and Leo Durocher and Earl Weaver going to argue about on the safe out call? This in the instant replay. The umpire will just say, guys, speak to the office in New York. They're the ones that made the decision. I agree with you, Mac. They'll find a reason to argue. They'll be combative still. I don't think they'll be quite as combative as before. I think the edge will be taken off. But they can argue balls and strikes, okay? They can make a big fuss, but that's because they want to argue. Listen, I don't know if you've known people in your life who are argumentative, and they're a pain in the butt. But if you agree with them completely, they're still not going to be pleasant, but the edge off their argument won't quite be as intense. You'll say, what do you mean I agree with you? What are you arguing with me? They won't smile, but they'll throw around a little bit. And that's what I think the case is. Yeah, I agree. Good points, Mac. They'll still be argumentative. Maybe 65% is argumentative for about 2/3, but I think the edge has to come off a little bit with the replay.
Maybe so.
Yeah, I think you guys are both right. I just don't think the league would tolerate it as much. They're not going to tolerate throwing dirt on the umpires. They're not going to tolerate throwing things, the cameras. I can imagine if he did that for real. And there isn't as many things to argue, right? Right, Jack hit the nail on the head. You're going to say, go to the replay, and the umpire's going to say, we looked at the replay. The guy, I didn't make the call. Some guy on the other end of this headset made the call. What are you yelling at me for? But I could see them using balls and strikes as the excuse. And we've seen Aaron Boone do that. Like they're yelling from the dugout, and then the umpire throws you out, and then that gives you your excuse to come out and start yelling at the umpire. That was probably Aaron Boone's finest moment, as one of his finest moments, as far as I'm concerned. That whole savages, my guys are savages, and you're in the box, and you're taking the calls away from them. You're doing a terrible job. You've got to step up your game. He was really showing fire and emotion. That was a couple of years ago. Brett Gardner was banging his bat on the roof of the clubhouse. That was a fun time. So, would Billy Martin or Leo Durocher or Earl Weaver or one of those types of guys find ways that they can still be confrontational? I'm sure they would. But I don't think the league would be as tolerant of it. And I think they'd be suspended a lot and they'd have to tone it down.
Honestly, I don't think Martin would care if he was suspended. I really don't. I don't think he would care if he was suspended for 3 or 4 games. That's the kind of person he was. He didn't care whether he got fired or hired. This man, to me, was just a renegade. He was a winner. He was a renegade, and he didn't care about consequences. He didn't care about consequences when he was a player, never mind as a manager. I just think when you say it's non-conclusive, it still goes with the call of the ump. So you still got ways to argue with the ump because the video did not overturn it. And I do agree that, of course, with this, it kind of takes a little bit of heat off the umps, which I don't agree with either. I think the umps are getting paid to ump the game, and stop with using the video as NFL referees do now. Nobody makes a call until the replay is made. It's ridiculous. We got to wait around to see what the call is. But I'll tell you right now, I guarantee this, and I said it before, I would not want to be an umpire when Billy Martin went out to the mound to make that pitcher's change. I would not, because I know what's coming.
Well, part of it, too, is Billy Martin, when he managed the Yankees, George Steinbrenner was the owner, and Steinbrenner loved when Martin argued. He absolutely loved it. He said, give him hell, Billy. And I just feel the manager would have to initiate arguments. He'd have to know beforehand, before the game or during the game, I got to argue about something, okay?
Yeah.
I just find the reason, but before instant replay, the reason would come to the manager to argue. Now the manager finds the reason. I mean, I just feel the edge goes off. But then again, those type of personalities, I see a point. They maybe never change no matter, what is.
As you said, Jack, I've met people like that too, and I've gotten stubborn sometimes, and after I got stubborn, I'm like, what the heck am I arguing? It's not that important, but there are people out there. You could say they're right, and they'll argue with you because you're not saying it for the right reason. It's just some people are just that way, and especially as intense as these managers were. Oh my man, they meant everything in the world.
You have people where you concede to them their argument. Okay, I settle. You're right. I'll go your way, and they still want to argue their point. That's when it gets to be difficult.
Yeah, you're just patronizing me, right? Yeah. You don't really agree.
Yeah, I mean, it's
that's crazy. So I want to take a little break, and I want to bring baseball into the overseas area, and the NBA plays overseas a lot. The NFL plays overseas now. Major League Baseball really doesn't play overseas too much. Not on a regular schedule. And I was thinking, why aren't Major League Baseball teams doing the same thing as the other leagues? I mean, listen, you got the Korean League, you got Japan League, you got you got the Central American leagues. They all got pretty good teams. I think some of them could compete with other teams in our league. Why is it Major League Baseball doing the same thing other teams are doing? To expand their popularity overseas? Why aren't they doing I'm not talking like playing the Japanese all-star team. I'm talking about like the Yankees and the Red Sox or the Houston Astros and the Atlanta Braves. Why aren't they playing in England? Why aren't they playing overseas? I always wondered about that.
No one would care here in the United States. And let's be honest, if we had a true World Series, like a World Cup, all the countries, I don't know would it be that interesting because we don't know the players like in Korea.
I'm not talking about that, Jack. I'm talking about actual Major League Baseball teams playing a game. The Yankees and Red Sox, listen to me, play in England. Why don't they do that?
Well, we have. I understand what you're saying. The Yankees go to. Didn't they do it with Hideki Matsui? The Yankees went to Japan, played some games.
But not against another Major League Baseball team, did they?
Against Japan's national team.
No. I think the Yankees played the Tampa Bay Rays in Japan.
Oh.
I think they went over. They played a couple of scrimmage games, and then they played a couple of real games against the Tampa Bay Rays in Japan. And a couple of years ago, they played that series in London against the Red Sox. But it's few and far between when baseball's doing that. The bigger picture is they don't do it a lot. And I think the reason it doesn't happen is because the baseball season's an everyday type of thing. And when you're traveling to distant places, the travel just, necessitates more days off. And then that upsets the ebb and flow of a season. And I think that's probably the reason they don't do it.
That's something to consider. I mean, I think it would be really good for baseball, if they did something like that, just to get more popularity. But that's a good point, Doc. If you think about it, the 162 game season, and maybe around how long is the All-Star break exactly?
Like 3 days.
Yeah, that's not.
What baseball did it in, a lot of decades ago in the 1930s, 40s. They did all this barnstorming. And as I recall, they did go out of the country. I don't remember the exact details, and did play games outside of the United States.
Yeah, there were a couple of big trips to Japan, and Babe Ruth was part of that, and Lou Gehrig went, and they used to do that. There was what was the guy's name? Napoleon LaHoy. Is that how you pronounce it? Like the old White Sox player or whatever. I think they did a world tour that even went through Egypt and Europe and things like that, like at the turn of the century. I'd have to look that all up, but there were times when baseball did take the game around the world, but that was always after the season. I think Mac is saying, why don't they play in-season games around the world? Yeah. That'd be interesting.
You know what it is? In those other parts of the world, bottom line, I think basketball is more popular than baseball in other parts of the world, so it's easier. Yeah, like you could get a Hakeem Olajuwon, you could get, Giannis superstars in their country come over and become superstars in the NBA. But in a country that's not known for baseball, it's really hard to find that compelling personality.
We have Brett Kell backstage right now. Let's bring him up, and I want to bring him up in the conversation of this too. Brett, how you doing today?
Good, and yourself?
Not too bad. Brett Kell from Binging Baseball. Great site. Go check it out when you get a shot. Brett, we were just talking about the NFL. Goes overseas and they play a regular season football game, and it draws. And the National Football League was not always big and popular in Europe and certain other places, Mexico and stuff like that. You see certain teams do this, or certain leagues do this, where they actually take the game itself. For instance, Boston and the Yankees, right? If the Red Sox and Yankees say had a 3-game series, I know they could set it up if they wanted to. They would have to make adjustments in the schedule to do this. But to see them go play in London, or to go see them play in Germany, or even down in Mexico, which is probably closer, or maybe
they have played in Mexico.
Right. I mean, if they did that once in a while, or other teams did that maybe once a year or twice a year, don't you think that would bring baseball even more popularity around the world than it is right now?
Yeah, and there's a group I'm a part of. It's MLB UK, and there's that group keeps on growing every day, and they're very intelligent fans. They don't just hop on and say, "Well, I'm going to be a fan of this team." They almost, like, some of them almost sit on the in that group for like a year or two, and then they kind of like, okay. They make an announcement, and it's kind of cool. It's like, it's like, instead of you just growing up rooting for a team, now you have some 40-year-old saying, all right, I'm picking my team. So it's interesting to see it like that, and it definitely be something that would definitely be a sellout, or even the series would be a sellout if they were to do that, because there's a very large contingent and of people that are in Europe that are baseball fans, and it's even growing, since the World Baseball Classic started. Now we have Team Israel, and it's becoming even bigger there, and with the Netherlands and other teams like that. The international play aspect, or going overseas to play a series, isn't so crazy.
I mean, I know Doc brought up and Jack's brought up, and it's true. I mean, I remember reading about. I wasn't around then when Babe Ruth and certain players, they had all-star teams. They went over and they played in Japan, and they played, in Central America. They played the Cuban All-Stars and stuff like that. And I don't think they really do that anymore. I mean, I don't hear a bunch of Major League Baseball All-Stars going around playing different leagues, not like they used to. And maybe because baseball has gotten so big, and it's, the players are paid so much, maybe they don't want to do that or take that chance anymore. I mean, even the Olympics, they have a problem with. I don't even know who plays in the Olympics for the Major League Baseball players. But I think that, something like this would be really cool, especially in Europe, where it's close enough for teams to play, to do a 4-game series there, and maybe, give the guys a few days off to get rested when they come back. And I know Major League Baseball could do it if they wanted to, but I don't know if it's feasible.
I think 2 years ago, or 3 years ago, Oakland and maybe Seattle played a series in Japan, and then there's still the ambassador, I think, series or tour or whatever, where major leaguers go overseas. Because I can almost remember David Ortiz doing something where over in Asia, where they kind of go over and take a few major leaguers over after the season's over and go play a couple exhibition games against some of the teams or the all-stars from different countries, and kind of keep the growing sport going, and in certain areas, because Japan is huge, and then so like China, they just started their program for the Olympics. When they hosted the Olympics, they started it like 4 years before they had Olympics. So it's still a growing sport. I mean, it's not maybe growing as fast as a lot of people would like, but it's not declining as much as people think it is.
Yeah, I just think they do and I think we'll all agree that baseball doesn't do a good enough job promoting the sport as a whole, as good as the NBA, the NFL. They're sort of like hockey, right? I mean, everybody may know, Mike Trout now, but it's not anywhere close to some of the stars that they got in the Major League Baseball where they don't shine them. And it's more of a, I guess, as I said before, a territorial kind of a regional popularity that a lot of baseball teams, get. So,
well, what you're talking about that when you compare it to hockey, what does hockey and baseball have in common compared to football and baseball?
They have the minor leagues.
Yes, and so right there, like when you come to an NBA player, especially NBA players, they're put on the pedestal like almost in high school now of popularity, and people know who the big stud player is in high school. When it comes to baseball, you can be a stud player in high school, stud player in college. There's no guarantee you're going to make it to the majors.
Very true.
But now here's the aspect there. I feel like baseball players and hockey players are a lot more fan oriented because of that simple fact of they go through the minors, they go through those small towns, they meet the locals and like Beloit, Wisconsin, and get to know them. I think it might have actually been Beloit. Now that I think about it, they did a documentary of this of four guys on the road to the majors, and like David Ortiz was one of them. And there's this lady that in essence was the grandma of all these players, and they all call her, and they had to go get her 2 answering machines and pay for another line for her because so many guys started calling her and just seeing how she was doing and things like that. And they're in the majors now, and they could have easily forgot about this lady. But it's just one of those things of with hockey, with baseball, it's a lot more fan-oriented mindset with the players than when you come to basketball or football, because they go through those minors and they're not put on the pedestal right off the bat in college and in high school like NBA and NFL players are.
It's a great point. It's a great point. I mean, there ain't too many draftees signed in baseball and hockey that are starting the next 2 years or so. Most of them got a very long road. And as you said, a lot of them don't even make it. And, me and Jack talk about the minor league system a lot. Doc has talked about it. And, the minor league system in baseball, they kind of put a hurting on it this year, Brett. They kind of cut some of them teams out of the league. And a lot of the minor league baseball players during the COVID were let go. And fired, and some of them they get their jobs back. And I would agree that especially in places that there is not Major League Baseball, for instance, like in Connecticut, our minor league baseball teams are sold out. And I imagine in Oklahoma, their teams are sold out, and it is more family friendly, I would say, than even fan friendly, where you can afford to take your kids and your family out to watch a baseball game, park, eat, and have a good time, because they structure that around the minor league system. So,
and like the Lexington Legends were one of the oldest minor league teams. They got cut from the being an affiliated team. Brandon Phillips from the Reds goes and buys the team this year, plays for the team, and they're playing with non-affiliated players, and they won the Atlantic League championship this last week. And he was just out there the whole time with the fans and enjoying it and having fun, and that's the same way with the other teams. Some of them switched to college, like you had the Norwich Sea Unicorns, which you talk about Connecticut. They were affiliated with the Tigers, and then they got cut, and now they're playing collegiate summer league. So they're out of the teams. A few folded, like you had the Staten Island Yankees folded. They're coming back though, at least as Staten Island's coming back with a minor unaffiliated minor league team, independent team. So, but yeah, it was a lot of players were hurt, but you have some great leagues like up in your guys' area. You have the Empire League, which is a great startup place for guys. Maglio Ordonez Jr. just signed out of that league with another independent team, and they're specifically almost like we're a feeder league. We want to feed into other leagues and get our guys out of here, and it's a really cool mindset.
I agree. Now you're a big Red Sox fan. Let's talk to the major leagues a minute here.
What happened? I don't know.
I said you're a Red Sox fan.
There was a game last night, Brett.
Yes.
The Red Sox. There was a game.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Listen, you got to be happy with the season you guys had.
Oh yeah.
I mean, listen, you had a chance to go to the World Series. A lot of teams don't get that chance once every few years. But, guy, your team was not even picked to be in the top 3 this year. Corey did an outstanding job. The Red Sox hung in there at the end through their losing slump, held off the Blue Jays, got ahead of the Yankees, beat the Rays. I mean, you got to be happy with what your team did this year.
Well, yeah, it's like the 04, 07 rosters. I mean, it was just filled with studs. And this year, it didn't have that same feel of when going into the playoffs of, okay, we have Ortiz, we have Pedroia, we have this guy, we have that. It's like, okay, who do we got? It's like, who's going to be that person we have to depend on? And it was a fun ride this year. The playoffs in general has just been a fun ride this year. It came down to the last day of the regular season to figure out what the playoffs were going to be exactly. And then you have the playing game, and overall it's just been fun. It's one thing as a Red Sox fan, just trying to figure out who's going to be that leader of the team this year, and who's going to be that person that is dependent upon out of the bullpen or out of on the rotation or in the lineup batting. It's Corey, like you said, Corey's done an outstanding job this year.
Yeah, definitely. Something that if they made the World Series, I think that I'd give them a shot to take that to game 6 or 7 too this year. I don't know if I guarantee they win it, but they're a battling team, great hitting team. Pitching needs a little help, but that I think every team needs pitching help now. So what do you think about tonight's game, Brett? Dodgers, Braves. You got Scorchers not pitching, so the Braves. I think that's good news for the Braves. But do you think they can hold off that Dodger machine?
It would be fun because with them losing the All-Star game to turn around and now have the World Series there after MLB took the All-Star game away. I would love to see Atlanta do it. And then there's guys that that deserve it, that do it right. I love Freddie Freeman. He's a very team-oriented guy, very just love of the game type of guy. I mean, I was watching this highlight last night where he went sliding into second to break up a double play, and the shortstop or second baseman bobbled the ball, and so he's just sitting there, and he just, as time gets called, knocks the ball out of the guy's hand and just playing with him, and that's the way he kind of is. Sorry, my dog keeps on trying to get in my lap.
Hey, listen, that's great. The appearance by Brett's dog is always welcome on the show.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
But I really like to see the Braves make it. And then honestly, if it's the Braves Astros, I'm going to pull for the Braves 100%.
Oh yeah, I bet you would. And right now, Houston was my pick for the World Series. One of my picks, and Jack's was the Braves. So we might face off, me and Jack, in the World Series. And I'm not going to tell him who my starting pitcher is when the game starts, because I don't think I have to. So it should be very interesting. Hey, Brett, I want to thank you for coming in, as you always do, around 8:30 and spend some time with us. That's Brett Kell from Binging Baseball. Knows about the independent leagues, the college leagues, anything about baseball. Brett has his hand on the pulse. Check out Binging Baseball. It's a great site. Again, Brett, thanks a lot. We'll be going to a commercial break right after.
I touched on Minnie Minoso yesterday. So he's one of the ones I grew up hearing about from my father all the time, and I decided be a good one to pick yesterday, and picked him. And interesting just story on the guy. Just when I do the research on these players, it's just fun to, especially even ones I know of, it's just fun to find all the fun facts out. And then shout out to Lacrosse Loggers, their collegiate summer league team in the Northwoods League. So,
of course. We love the shout outs, especially that dog hat you had on one time was tremendous. I forget who that was in response to, but Brett Kell, folks, check out Binging Baseball if you want to know anything about baseball. He's got a great site, and we have him here every Saturday. Have a great day, Brett. And again, congratulations to the Boston Red Sox. They did a great job.
Thank you. You guys have a good day.
Okay, thanks, Brett. So there you go, folks. Brett Kell. In fact, he's a GM of one of the independent league teams out there. That's how much he's into the sport. He loves baseball, as you all can tell. But we're going to be right back, folks. We're going to take a quick break here as soon as I can find where my quick break thing is. Jack, you got to help me sometimes, Jack. You sit back there.
I interrupt when I open my mouth.
Yes.
Quiet.
That's it. Throw the words right back in my face again. I love it, Jack. You do that very well. I know, I got a new computer I got to get on after this, and I can't figure this out. Wait till I get on that, Jack. I mean, I'm going to have to relearn the whole thing all over again. So you think I'm slow now? Wait till that happens. We'll be right back after this, folks.
If you served honorably in our nation's armed forces and you're looking for a way to continue serving your fellow veterans in your community, then join AMVETS. Each year, AMVETS members volunteer millions of hours at VA healthcare facilities from coast to coast, helping to improve the lives of their fellow veterans through the VA Voluntary Services Program. AMVETS posts and departments also participate in a wide variety of community service projects, ranging from Americanism in our schools to supporting the Special Olympics and Boy Scouts of America. If you no longer wear the uniform today, you can still serve through the AMVETS by joining today at amvets.org.
When the job is done, this guy'll be ready to dig into something mighty good to eat. How do you handle a hungry man? The manhandlers. One of the manhandlers is Campbell's Vegetable Beef. Gets a man-sized supper off to a good hot start. Good. The manhandlers.
When you hear the word asthma, you probably think of shortness of breath, coughing, or inhalers. Lots of things can trigger asthma, but the fact is that asthma doesn't just attack, it can kill. But with proper medical management, asthma is controllable. If you experience shortness of breath, wheezing, tightness in your chest, or persistent nighttime coughing, you may have asthma. See your doctor and get the facts. You'll breathe easier. For more information, call 211-INFO-LINE. A message from the Connecticut Department of Public Health, keeping Connecticut healthy.
It certainly is a big bun. It's a very big bun. Big fluffy bun. It's a very big fluffy bun. Where's the beef?
Some hamburger places give you a lot less beef on a lot of bun.
Where's the beef?
At Wendy's, we serve a hamburger we modestly call a single. And Wendy's single has more beef than the Whopper or Big Mac. At Wendy's, you get more beef and less bun.
Hey, where's the beef? I don't think there's anybody back there.
You want something better. You're Wendy's kind of people.
Hi, Grandma. What's for dinner?
Hey, honey, I'm making stew tonight.
Ooh, can Nina come over?
I'm not sure about our new friend. I wonder if there's been any drinking going on. Alcohol at her age can lead to so many bad things. I've been meaning to ask you, what would happen if someone offered you a drink?
Grandma?
This is hard. She's so young, but I know I need to talk to her about it now before someone tries to give her alcohol. If anyone ever does offer you a drink, I want you to say no. I have too much respect for my family, and I don't want to get in trouble.
Okay.
Really?
I promise, Grandma. I love you too.
Okay, how about tasting this stew and telling me what you think?
Some children may try alcohol as young as 9 years old. It's not too early to talk about drinking. For tips on how to begin the conversation, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. That's underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. This message brought to you by SAMHSA and this station.
Their ketchup's coming out a lot slower than ours does. That's not good manners.
Oh, you noticed our Heinz. Here, taste it.
Best ketchup I've ever tasted.
That's pouring it on a little thick.
Yeah.
Thick, rich Heinz ketchup. The taste.
If you talk and they will hear you every single time.
Oh, we're getting killed.
Yeah, well, Kyle's not here.
How come?
Kicked off the team. Didn't Tim tell you? Kyle and some other kids got caught drinking beer in the park a couple of nights ago.
Really?
Yeah. Zero tolerance. He's out for the season.
Come on, it's a first offense, right?
That we know of. But why should that matter? He knew not to drink. I've made it clear to Matt that's what we expect from him. What have you said to Tim?
Nothing really. You know, a lot of kids try it at this age, so.
Yeah, well, a lot of kids don't try it too. I'm not saying that Matt's going to be this perfect kid, but if I don't tell him what we expect and why he shouldn't drink, how's he going to know?
You think kids that age really listen?
They never admit it, Bill, but they hear more than you think.
Talk. They hear you. For more information about talking with kids about underage drinking, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
Try.
This is a presentation of Northeast Streaming Sports.
Good morning. You're listening to the Mac and Jack Sports Show on Northeast Streaming Sports.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to the Mac and Jack Sports Show. We're on live Thursday through Sunday, 8 to 10 a.m. Welcome back. I'm Mac, your host. Your co-host, our legendary boxing writer himself, Jack Hirsch. And from the Yankees blog and show, Start Spreading the News, Dr. Paul Semendinger. We're having a debate. Just had Brett Keller on talking about minor leagues, what they could be doing overseas, all bunch of stuff that we love talking to Brett about. But we're going to get back to our debate right now. The next topic is it harder to hit for the cycle for a hitter or to throw a perfect game for a pitcher? And Doc, you lead us off this time.
Oh, all right. Wow. I usually like to be the guy to listen to both of your arguments and then get mine. All right. So I don't think this one's that hard. There have been 21 perfect games in the history of Major League Baseball. There have been 334 cycles. So it's definitely harder to pitch a perfect game. Perfect games are rare. They don't happen all the time. And again, there's been only 21 of them. But if the question is between pitching a no-hitter and hitting for the cycle, that's a little closer. There have been 314 no-hitters and 334 cycles. I still think, even though it's that close, that the no-hitter is harder. And I think going forward, it's going to be even harder, even though this year there were a record number of no-hitters. And the reason I think it's getting harder and harder to throw a no-hitter is because of pitch counts. And we've seen numerous times where pitchers may even be pitching a no-hitter, and because of pitch counts, the numbers get too high up and the team takes them out. And we've seen guys, and I think one example might be Johan Santana's no-hitter. Another one would be David Cohn's perfect game, where guys pitch deep into games and then they come back less effective immediately after, and sometimes even forever after. So I think teams are much more focused on pitch counts, and they don't care. They care less about the individual stat, and they care more about the fact that if a pitcher's numbers are getting up, they're going to lift him, whether or not he has a perfect game or a no-hitter. I also think that it's hard to pitch a no-hitter. And in order to pitch a no-hitter, while there have been guys who aren't all-time greats who've done it, you have to be pretty darn good to pitch a no-hitter. And, of course, you have to be good to play Major League Baseball. But guys who've hit for the cycle, it's a lot more fluky. You could hit a home run, then you get a triple, and the next thing you know, a double and a single. And not that it's common, but there have been guys. I was just making a quick list of guys like Ivan DeJesus and Freddie Patek and Tim Foley and Jack Brohammer, all middling middle infielder types who all hit for the cycle. Chris Spire, who was a nice ball player, played for the Giants for much of his career. He actually hit for the cycle twice. None of these guys would be considered all-time greats. Now, the list of all-time greats, many of them have also hit for the cycle. If you go down the list, Mike Trout's done it, Dave Winfield's done it, Lou Gehrig's done it. I mean, the list goes on and on. But to wrap up my argument, I think it's easier for a lesser quality ball player to have a fluky day and hit for the cycle than it is for a lesser pitcher to have a fluky day and pitch a no-hitter.
What's your answer, Jack?
Well, I'm going to say, I mean, I can't argue the stats, what has been. The stats overwhelmingly show it's harder to pitch a perfect game than it hits for the cycle. But I'm talking about the year 2021 going forward, not in the past. And the game is kind of different. It's changed a little bit. Doc's right about the pitch counts. It's sometimes hard to go deep into games, but there's something about a perfect game in 2021. They're not going to take a guy out unless it's a big game. The division's on the line. You have a Mariano Rivera in the bullpen. Once a pitcher has a perfect game going for 5 innings, he's going to go into the 6th inning, the 7th inning. It's going to continue on. One thing how baseball has changed a lot, and Doc named some players who hit for the cycle. I don't think they do it in 2021. I'll tell you why. How many games have we now seen where a ball is hit and it caroms off the wall and the run only gets a single out of it? That was unheard of in the past. If a guy would hit the ball and it would hit the outfield fence and he'd be stranded on first base, people would think the runner wasn't hustling. Somehow the game has seemed to change. The big hit is the triple. The triple has kind of become a rarity. I mean, guys, anyone can hit a home run, even the weakest slap hitter. Obviously, a single is the easiest of the 4 to get a double. You could get a bloop to the outfield and just get it on pure hustle alone. Yeah, and of course, anyone could hit the ball over the fence, even though that's hard for certain hitters. But the triple, that's such a hard thing to get. I would love maybe, Doc, if not right now, because it might take a bit of work, to compile the triple statistics, how years ago they compared to today. My guess would be, just off the top of my head, guys aren't hitting as much triples in this age of the great players. Maybe do a comparison, Doc, like a Willie Mays and the Mike Trout, a Ken Griffey in between, Hank Aaron, Roberto Clemente. I get the feeling that those guys hit more triples back in the day than the modern guys today. I could be wrong. I'm just guessing.
You're probably right.
But that's my feeling. That's why I kind of feel the cycle is so special. It's so rare. And perfect games, how many of them have been in Major League history? So I certainly can't argue that point. But there's a lot of luck in perfect games and no-hitters. You know, you get your share of great catches. And what was that movie, For Love of Game, with Billy Chappell? How many great plays did they make? A guy who pitched a 5-hit shutout probably pitched a better game than his perfect game with all, the fielding gems behind them. But, it's hard to argue with stats. Based on stats, I lost this debate clearly. But just based on my feeling and emotion from 2021 going forward, I just feel it's a little harder to hit for the cycle.
Let me just jump in, because I didn't know there were any cycles this year, so I'm just looking.
Yeah.
There were actually 4. Trey Turner hit one in June 30th. Jake Cronenworth for the Padres hit one on July 16th. Freddie Freeman hit one on August 18th. And Eddie Rosario of the Braves hit for the cycle on September 19th. So
I guess I lose it with the perfect game. How many no-hitters have there been this year?
There were 9 no-hitters, I believe.
9 no-hitters. So at least the evidence, if we altered the question, what's harder, no-hitter, the cycle, I've got a much better argument. But the perfect game, I guess, is still a rarity.
I think 8 of the games this year were one pitcher throwing the no-hitter, and one of them was a combined no-hitter. The Cubs tossed a combined no-hitter versus the Dodgers in June.
Well, Carlos brings up a point about the shift. The triples are less, maybe because of the shift, and the doubles too. Maybe you've got more feelers out in one area where a guy's pulling the ball, hits the wall, and you got an extra guy there that may cut down the ball moving as much. That's a relevant point. Everything both of you guys brought up, I was going to say basically, the triple is the hardest one to get. And the difference between a no hitter and a perfect game is very vast, right? I mean, you can't walk anybody, and then you got the scoring, how they score it. Is it a hit or is it an error? And a lot of times that's a judgment call based off the hometown guy who keeps the stats. So they'll give somebody a hit instead of an error when maybe it should have been an error, or maybe vice versa, right? So some of that even comes down to opinion, whether you get that perfect game or not, because the error, of course, wouldn't affect the perfect game, and that hit would. So, and a good point. I think Kluber was a good example of what happened to somebody that threw a great game this year, right? And he was non-effective after that. In fact, he went on the injured reserve. I still think the perfect game is the hardest thing to do because, you got the calling balls and strikes, and if he doesn't give you that one pitch, you may end up walking the guy instead of the guy hitting into a ground out, popping up, or you striking out a guy. So, but I do agree with you, Jack, about triples. They definitely don't hit as many triples as they did way back when.
I lose the perfect game argument, so I'm going to readjust it. It's harder than a no-hit
and
effort, with teams combining their pitches, counting that.
Yeah, and I'd agree with that too, because I looked up the stats too, and the perfect games are just hardly any compared to what hitting for the cycle was. And I guess the way they hit today, they're not going to hit as many triples because they're either trying to hit the ball out of the park, or they don't hit the ball out of the park and it becomes a single because they hit it at the bottom of the bat. As you said, the game has changed a lot. But something, the MVP for the Dodgers showed that just hitting can win you that MVP now, right? I mean, he didn't hit a lot of home runs, but he sure or is it for the Astros? I'm trying to think. I think it's for the Dodgers so far.
Mookie Betts we're talking about?
Yeah, not Mookie. I'm trying to remember.
Bellinger?
I think it's Bellinger, who just keeps moving the ball around the field and going the other way. And he's really hitting the heck out of the ball. So, it's still alive. It's just not as much as it used to be way back when, where they use all parts of the field. And the hitters they just try to pull the ball.
I also think the runners might be a little more timid to try for a triple. I don't know that I don't think they have in their head when they come up to bat, well, there are no outs. If I have a chance to get to third, I'm not going to take the chance. But if there's one out, I would, or whatever the strategy is on that. I think they do that on instinct. It's such a tough decision to know whether to go from second to third to take that chance. Yesterday, Carl Schwarber with the Red Sox early in the game when the Red Sox were down only, I think, 1-0. Maybe it was no score in the first inning. There was one out and a fly ball to center field, and he's on second, and he went to third base. He was safe, but a perfect throw probably would have edged him out, but the ball hit off, his foot or something. But it's chancy. I think they don't want. You don't have like Roberto Clemente, Jackie Robinson types who play absolutely fearless. And I think everyone feels they're under the scrutiny, making the mistakes, so they just become a little more cautious.
Go ahead, Doc. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, and I don't have the stats in front of me. I'd have to look this up. But there are statistics that say a runner at second will score almost as often as a runner from third if the runner's at second with less than 2 outs. A single will score most guys from second, just as a single will score most guys from third. So I think you are correct that teams take fewer chances to try to get the guy to third. That's one of the reasons that they bunt less, right? They'd say, I'd rather have a runner on second and no outs than a runner on third and 1 out. The runner on second, this is what I was thinking, the runner on second and no outs is going to score more often than the runner on third and 1 out. So it's better to play a little more conservatively and keep your runners from moving up than to give away an out just to get a guy to third. And so that might be another reason they don't try for triples as much.
I don't know what the stats are, but the one play in baseball I always despised my whole life is no outs, and the team will give up an out to advance the runner second to third. I hated that with a passion my whole life since I've been following baseball. It never made any darn sense to me because the runner at second base probably scores anyway. I don't even like the bunt from first to second, giving up an out, but I can understand that because the guy's in scoring position if you get a base hit. But these outs are valuable. And, and chances are if you let the batter swing away, it might work itself out anyway. And then they send guys up to bunt who don't know how to bunt because they think it's the logical thing to do. I mean, the majority of players just can't bunt. They don't have the training or whatever. Derek Jeter was a wonderful bunt, a wonderful bat control. But some of these guys, they put up the bunt. I just don't get it.
Well, I disagree with you to the point. I see no problem with bunting a guy to third if you can bunt, because a lot of people fly out today. There's a lot less more ground outs than there are pop-ups today, and everybody's swinging for the fences anyway. So if you pop out, say, and you got a guy on second, and you pop out to left field, that guy's not advancing to third. But if you bunt him over and he's at third base, I guarantee you, even when you're flying in the outfield, you're going to try and score that runner. And then you always got the wild pitch. And there's so many things that could happen. I want that guy closest to home plate with one out as possible. But again, I think it has a lot to do with analytics today too, where what you're saying, well, a guy in second, has just as good as chances. I believe in aggressive base running and aggressive play on the offense. I don't think teams do it enough anymore. And I think that's why the game is so boring and slow today, that we're sitting back there and waiting for people to knock the ball out of the park now, and they're striking out and they're popping out. And I just think if there was a team out there right now that played old-fashioned baseball, you could score without getting a base hit. You could get a walk, steal second, get moved to third, and sacrifice then. You didn't even get a hit, and you could score a run. And I think that's part of basic baseball. And I don't know why teams, especially the teams with not as much talent as other teams, don't do that as much. I don't get it.
Listen, there's a little difference involved to me. I'm not against if you have a very speedy guy on first base who's a really good base stealer, trying to get his lead time and steal it. You're not automatically conceding an out like you will with the bunt. When a guy is deliberately sacrificing, it's as if you're conceding a bunt. You're telling the other team, okay, let my runner go to second base and you can have the out. What was it in the movie Moneyball? Billy Bean said, look, if they bunt something to the effect and they give it to you, throw it to first base and say thank you. Okay, that's always been my attitude.
Well, the thing about baseball is there's only one thing you have in limited supply, and that's outs. You get 27 of them. And there is the theory, don't give any of them away, because once you give one away, now you only have 26.
And that's true, but I'll tell you right now, if I get a run for one of those outs, I'll take that run for an out anytime. That means
There's another element, Matt. There's another element. If you could guarantee me, if a man's on first, game's tied up, you want to get the guy to second, if you can absolutely guarantee me for the out I'm giving up, the runner's going to be at second base. If there's an absolute guarantee, maybe I'm going to consider that, but so many times it's a fiasco. The guy tries to bunt on two, gets two strikes on him, and he looks completely inept trying to bunt. That's what gets me.
I agree.
No idea how he even hold the darn bat.
I agree.
Now all of a sudden he has two strikes on him, and he's in a hole, and he's practically useless with that at bat.
Well, see, you would have to have a manager or a philosophy when the guys came to your team. For the first month, they'd be taught how to bunt. I would strive to make sure I had one of the best bunting teams in the league. And you know something, Jack, too? There's something about defense this year, too. The defense is not as good as it used to be either. So, there are a lot more errors. There are a lot more throws that aren't made. How many times did you see the Yankees have 3 errors in a game this year? I would want to put pressure on the defense constantly and on that pitcher constantly. I don't want that pitcher locked in throwing 100 miles an hour. I want him looking over at first base. I want him looking at second. I even want him looking at third. I want to break his concentration as much as I can. And I think being aggressive would do that, but it would take a lot to do. And I wanted to ask you guys about a play that happened. Red Sox are down 2-0. I think there was a guy on third. Cora sends the runner, and it was a strikeout throw out to second. 2 outs. I think that ended the inning, if I'm not mistaken. You think that was a good call? Now, here's where I think maybe you should be that aggressive. The guy actually struck out, couldn't make contact with the ball, and we don't have contact hitters like we used to. But not only did he ran on a catcher with a cannon, and that killed the rally. They had first and third with 1 out, and that might have killed the rally. What are you guys' opinion on that?
You know what? I don't remember. Did the runner break? The run on third base, did he break for home?
No. The run on first broke for second.
Yeah, because if you have to run at third base, someone extremely quick, and it's a time play. Listen, there was one out. He's trying to make something happen. You're counting on the batter to make contact. The burden's on him. Hopefully, he doesn't hit a line drive right at someone where the runner's going to get doubled off. I can't condemn that. Sometimes I'd like to see the hit and run used a little more. You're talking about being aggressive. And sometimes I don't understand if a runner's on third base and there's one out and there's a ground ball to short at third base. The moment the ball leaves the fielder's hand for the throw to first, I'd love to see a runner break for home. It's all a timed play. We used to do that in Little League all the time. I mean, obviously, that's a lower level. It would work there.
The principle is the same.
The timing play, if you have someone really quick on bases. I don't know, guys. I'm not criticizing Cora for that. I don't know about you, Doc, but let me, Doc, answer that question, but answer this too. Would you like to see teams more aggressive when the runner's on third with no outs, one out, and the ball's hit to the left side of the infield, and the runner takes 3-4 steps off the base or whatever, and as soon as it leaves the fielder's hand, just break for home plate?
Yeah, so I think we're talking about a couple things, right? I think last night with the Red Sox, they were trying to make something happen. Now, I haven't watched the Red Sox with enough, closely enough all year to know if they were a big time running team. I suspect they were not, and so I think sometimes managers try to get just a little bit too cute. Like, hey, let's try something we really haven't done a whole lot of this year because that'll really trick the other team here in this big spot and we can make something happen. And I think when you're trying to do things that are out of your comfort zone, out of what got you to the point where you are in the playoffs, usually they don't tend to work. Now, again, I don't have any statistics to back that up, but it's just the feel, right? Like when you ask people to do what they're not used to doing, you can't necessarily expect that all of a sudden it's going to work. And that play to me had the feel of that. Like, let's try to do the hit and run with the guy on third, and maybe we can have something happen. And it didn't happen. And I was watching the recap, and they were saying like that was the turning point of the game, which then becomes the turning point of the season and the series. And now the Red Sox are eliminated and they go home. So, in a general sense, I would rather, because I think this is what the question was, would you rather your team be more aggressive? I would always rather my team be more aggressive. And I'd rather my team know how to run the bases. I'd rather they be smart on the bases. I'd rather they make things happen. The Yankees got burned a lot this year on the old contact play with the guy on third. As soon as the batter makes contact, you send him home. And they had a lot of guys thrown out, especially early in the season on that. So I'm not a big fan of that. But I am a big fan of you have to get the good lead off of third. And if the ball gets past the pitcher's mound and it's heading towards short or second, then you go home and, nine times out of 10, probably more than that, you're going to make it. But when you go on the contact play, the minute the ball's hit, sometimes it's hit to the guy playing in at third or first, and then you're a dead duck. So I think you have to plan for this. And I think as Mac was saying, you have to strategize, and that's what spring training is for. You have to get your team ready to play a certain style of ball. And I would always prefer a team that's smarter and more aggressive on the base paths. But of course, you also have to have guys that can run. He can't do that with a team of lumbering giants either.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, contact hitting, you have to go back to the days of, Boggs was a good contact hitter. Damon was a good contact hitter. Gardner, when he first came up, was a very good contact hitter. I mean, you got to know who's up there, too. I think the big problem with sending them and trying to hit was this guy that was up wasn't a good contact hitter. I guess you got to know your team, too. I'm not saying you just go crazy, you run the bases and go nuts. I mean, this is something you got to know your players, too. And another big play that happened with the Red Sox, I'm almost positive it was the Red Sox. I saw the clip, and maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it was the Braves game, but I think you guys will know what I'm talking about. A guy was playing first base that hadn't played first base. The ball was hit to him, handcuffed him. He had a double play, right? He tagged the runner. He tagged the base, but he turned his back on home. So the guy at third scored. So he got a double play, but he gave up the run instead of keeping his his face forward. He's still going to tag the runner, still going to tag the base, but would had his eye on the guy going from third to home where he could have made a play. And of course, he turned around and was too late. And the guy at third, I think it was the Dodgers Braves now that I'm thinking about it. The guy at third went home because he saw him turn his back. Makes sense, right? And the throw came too late. So again, here's a position defense where you have a guy that's not used to playing first base all the time, making a play that, as you talked about Little League, Jack, you're taught in Little League, the guy's on third. After you make that play, you're always looking at the guy at third.
I can't recall the play, but if it was the Braves, I don't think Freddie Freeman, their first baseman, would have made a play like that. I mean,
I think it was the Red Sox game last night.
You mentioned the Dodger Braves.
I wasn't sure which one it was. I think it was the Red Sox. It could have been the Braves.
Was it Schwarber?
And I think Alvarez scored on that play.
Yes.
The play you're thinking.
Yes. It might have been Schwarber, Jack.
Schwarber, who's not necessarily a natural first baseman.
Right.
So he's not. Yeah, he's a little bit of a defensive liability.
So he makes the play, and instead of keeping his head forward, touching the runner, touching the bag, and watching the third base runner, he turned his back, and the third base runner took off for a home and gave up that one run. So again, defense is just as important.
It's funny. I made a joke about a movie for love of game. You take a famous baseball movie, Major League. And when you saw the runner score the winning run in Major League, I don't know whether you recall the fictional first baseman Clu Hayward. As soon as he caught the ball, for a split second, he turned like to complain to the umpire before throwing it home. So there's a certain, really fundamental thing with these guys. But, situations differ. Players differ, like what they can do, but the fundamentals have to always be the same.
And you look at the pressure too, Jack. Right? You get hit. I mean, the shot was a shot. He got handcuffed, but he did stop it. Great play. Just didn't make the great play on there. So maybe just the excitement of getting a double play. Yeah. He lost his mind for that 1 second. It's not as easy as people think. I mean,
it's a split second decision. We talked about bunting before. And I wanted to give props to Billy Martin, Matt, because he was the greatest field manager I ever saw. Maybe not all around the way he handled players and situations, but on the field during the game, no one was better than Billy Martin. He forced the issue, constantly put pressure on the other team. But he even had, in that famous incident when Reggie Jackson got suspended, he insisted Reggie Jackson bunt. My question is, was Reggie Jackson truly capable of lying down a good bunt? Because the situation called for bunt. The player may have been the wrong player, and knowing your personnel in the situation is so important. That's why I think managers in general go wrong. They play to a situation, not necessarily what the player can do.
Yeah, maybe you pinch hit for a good bunter there, even though you're sitting down Reggie Jackson, right? I mean, that's what you want to do.
That takes a lot of guts. You could do that, let's say you do that the last of the ninth and it goes into extra innings, and you're kind of losing that bat a couple innings later. It could come back to haunt you. But you're right, Max. Sometimes that's what
you want to do, right? I mean, if it's your decision, then you get a good bunter in there, I guess. I don't know. I mean,
I wouldn't do it. I would never do it.
I'll tell you right now, I'm not second-guessing Billy Martin. I'm not going to second-guess Billy or any great manager. I mean, really, even Cora sending the guy, I think it was well-intended. But I don't think he had the right personnel, and he went against the wrong catcher doing that, too. Because the guy had to play as a cannon. I mean, literally.
I think the guy thrown out was Alex Verdugo. And Alex Verdugo had 6 stolen bases this year, and he'd been caught twice. So he tried 8 times. He was 6 out of 8. That's not terrible, but it's not great.
Well,
he's not a real big stolen base guy. And so
he's better Ricky Henderson, that's for sure.
That's
right?
not enough
that's
of
the
a
point.
body of work.
You're taking the guy out of what his typical game is, and you're trying to make something happen by playing a brand of baseball you really haven't played all year. And I don't think the place to try to make something happen and play a brand of baseball you haven't really played all year with that type of player or that individual player is in Game 6 of the American League Championship Series. I don't think that's when you pull out the play out of a rabbit's hat.
unless it works and the guy gets a base hit and you score 2 runs and tie the game, then it was a great play, right?
Then you were brilliant. That's the second guessing, of course.
Then you were a brilliant guy. So, folks, we're going to take our second break. We're going to be back on the other side, talk a little football, and, of course, some other stuff that pops up as we go down the avenues that we do here on the Mac and Jack show. We always end up going down some avenues that I don't even know is coming. That's the great thing about having Jack on the show. So, I mean, we might start talking about the 1902 soccer finals in India. I don't know what he does sometimes. So I'm ready, though. I'm ready.
You didn't tell me we were going to cover that, Mac. I got to do a little more preparation.
Well, I guarantee you, if I brought it up, you'd have some information on it. Folks, we'll be right back after these messages.
We all make choices. When it comes to alcohol, kids make choices whether to drink or not.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Remember, I'm going to Alex's party tonight and sleeping over.
Hey, have a seat for a second. Remind me about that party again.
And adults make choices whether to talk about it. That's true of parents and every other trusted adult in a kid's life. Kids want to know our expectations when it comes to alcohol and other drugs. They want guidance and honest answers to their questions. And it makes a difference when the message is consistent and part of everyday conversations. So talk with your kids and help lead them on a positive path. Because when you talk, they hear you. For more information about talking with your kids about underage use of alcohol and other drugs, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. If you served honorably in our nation's armed forces and you're looking for a way to continue serving your fellow veterans in your community, then join AMVETS. Each year, AMVETS members volunteer millions of hours at VA healthcare facilities from coast to coast, helping to improve the lives of their fellow veterans through the VA Voluntary Services Program. AMVETS posts and departments also participate in a wide variety of community service projects, ranging from Americanism in our schools to supporting the Special Olympics and Boy Scouts of America. If you no longer wear the uniform today, you can still serve through the AMVETS by joining today at amvets.org.
If you talk and they will hear you every single time.
Oh, we're getting killed.
Yeah, well, Kyle's not here.
How come?
Kicked off the team. Didn't Tim tell you? Kyle and some other kids got caught drinking beer in the park a couple of nights ago.
Really?
Yeah. Zero tolerance. He's out for the season.
Come on, it's a first offense, right?
That we know of. But why should that matter? He knew not to drink. I made it clear to Matt, that's what we expect from him. What have you said to Tim?
Nothing really. You know, a lot of kids try it at this age, so.
Yeah, well, a lot of kids don't try it too. I'm not saying that Matt's going to be this perfect kid, but if I don't tell him what we expect and why he shouldn't drink, how's he going to know?
You think kids that age really listen?
They never admit it, though, but they hear more than you think.
Talk. They hear you. For more information about talking with kids about underage drinking, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
Try.
Jack is a legendary Hall of Fame boxing rider. Mac spells cat with the letter K. Mac played football and baseball for 10 years, coached football for 12. Jack was the wiffle ball home run king of the neighborhood. Jack was a sparring partner of the middleweight champion of the world, Golden Gloves boxer. Mac still reads cereal boxes at breakfast. Together they form the Sports Odd Couple. Both know sports in every way, but mostly at odds with their commentary and opinion. The Mac and Jack Sports Show, 8 to 10 a.m. on Facebook Live, Northeast Streaming Sports YouTube channel, Thursday through Sunday. Also on Spotify. Tune in and enjoy the show.
I mean, you can see right now, without LeBron, Lakers are struggling.
Let me tell you about a team I hate, all right? I know the Dallas Cowboys fan is here, so I had to make sure he knew how much I hate this team.
I'm ready. I've often said that the people who run baseball, they try very hard to ruin it.
A
Uptown Brooklyn. I don't have a problem saying it to his face. Oh, I'm from Brooklyn. Hey, guys, any?
Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to the Mac and Jack Sports Debate Show here live Saturday. We're on Thursday through Sunday, 8 to 10 a.m. Tomorrow we got our big football show. Viewer favorite. Join us tomorrow as we have on the legendary defensive end, two-time Super Bowl champion, Jim Jeffcoat, Robert Butler from Sports Scope, and we'll have our Patriots preview and our Eagles preview tomorrow, so join us for that. We have a good time there. But right now, we got one of our guests and our friends, Dr. Paul Semendinger, who joins us every Saturday, and we're getting back onto the debate. And Jack, I think are you first with this one, or am I? I'm not sure. I'll go first. It doesn't matter.
You always insist on having the last word anyway, Matt.
Well, that's what happens. That's what happens when you control the board, Jack. That's the only advantage I have. I can get the last word in before we push it. But the debate question today that Jack proposed here is very, very interesting. And his question is: could an elite running quarterback be an elite running back? And it's a good question. There have been great running quarterbacks throughout the history of football. You can go all the way back to Fran Tarkenton and Joe Kapp, who ran with the ball very well. You can go to Bobby Douglas, who was a fullback almost. He was one of the first quarterbacks. I think he got 998 yards. He just missed 1,000 yards, but he ran with the ball, and he ran with the ball often. And all the way up to Michael Vick, Cam Newton. Today you got Kyle Murray, Josh Allen, of course, the great Lamar Jackson, who looks like he could be a running back. But there's a big difference between playing quarterback and running back. A defense is set up in certain ways. In other words, a defense calls its plays and strategy based off a few basic rules, guys. First is down and distance, right? If it's 1st and 10, they'll probably run with the ball more than 50% of the time. If it's 2nd and short, they're probably going to run with the ball. If it's 2nd and long, they're probably going to throw the ball. So the defense makes adjustments based off down and distance. So if it's 2nd and 8, you're not going to have all those linebackers, and you're probably going to have more defensive backs than linebackers. Of course, 3rd and long, they're going to throw the ball 9 times out of 10. And then there's also position of the field. If you're down near your goal line, you're probably not going to throw the ball as much. You're worried about getting picked off or having to punt from your own area. So you try to run with the ball and try to pick up first downs, maybe short passes. And then you got the last thing that defense is key on is score compared to time in the game, right? If you're ahead in the game and you're up by a touchdown, you're going to try and control the ball. If you're behind, you're probably going to throw the ball. And this is how defensive coordinators call the game. So when somebody like Lamar Jackson runs with the ball, it's normally on a passing down. So he has to break that pocket, which is only 4 guys. And you're either in a zone defense where you got to cover an area, or you're chasing wide receivers around the field if you're on man-to-man. This gives a running quarterback a tremendous advantage, because once he gets to pass that first line, which these running quarterbacks can do, there's hardly anybody that you're going to hit you for the first 5 to 10 yards. And normally it's only one guy. Your wide receivers turn around and now they start blocking. So you're in the open field with nobody around you, and your wide receivers now turn into blockers. And you're able to rip off 20, 30 yards a run. A running back, on the other hand, is normally going to run with the ball on running situations when the defensive line's first priority is to stop the run. And you got linebackers in there to stop the run. And you got safeties up near the line to stop the run. So with Derrick Henry, what he does is he runs with the ball more on running downs than passing downs. It's a lot harder to do. And as great as Cunningham was, as great as Cam Newton is, or was, as great as Lamar Jackson is now, if he lined up at running back in a running situation, he's not going to have open field. He's going to have to run through a lot of linemen and linebackers and safeties to pick up yardage. So what Lamar Jackson is a threat on a passing down to run with the ball. There's hardly any running plays call for this guy unless there's an option and he's making a read. And again, in that situation, a running back doesn't have an option. He gets the ball and he pounds into the line, gets it on a sweep when there's running plays for the most part. So for a great running back, a great quarterback to become a great running back is very hard, or he would be a running back. If Lamar Jackson was that great of a running back that he could run with the ball on running downs, he would be a running back. He wouldn't be a quarterback. He just happens to be a quarterback that's a tremendous athlete, as Cam Newton was, and can run with the ball when the pocket breaks down. And when he gets in the open field, as any running back could, which he has a better shot at doing, he becomes a huge threat. So I'm not saying that Lamar Jackson is not a great runner. All I'm saying is he has a tremendous advantage over a running back when he is in there on a passing down and they're not looking for the run and there's no linebackers in there. So that's why Lamar Jackson would not be an elite running back. He might be a good one. I don't know. I would have to see it happen. But he is not a Derrick Henry. He is not a McCaffrey when he's healthy. He is not a Saquon Barkley when he's healthy. He is not a Zeke Elliott when he's healthy. He's not built for that. And he's not used to running.
Or John Riggins. Just needed.
Or a John Riggins, right? Exactly. He's a great quarterback that runs great and has tremendous moves and size. And when he gets in the open field, which he does often, he can rip off big yardage, which other running backs have to fight to get to that open field. So that's why Lamar Jackson or any great running quarterback probably could not be a great elite running back.
Mac, let me just correct one thing. They're never going to turn an elite quarterback into a running back no matter what, even if he can be a great full-time running back. Elite quarterbacks are very, very hard to find.
Well, we're not saying that. We're saying if they got.
You said Lamar Jackson probably would have been turned into running back if he could.
If he was an elite running back,
great runner.
If he was an elite running back, Jack, I guarantee you, if he was an elite running back, he'd be a running back. There's no doubt about it.
But then whoever would replace him at quarterback wouldn't be getting the same running yardage that Lamar Jackson gets at quarterback.
You
wouldn't be giving them up. Listen, Doc mentioned John Riggins. You're never going to turn an elite quarterback into a John Riggins type runner. That's not going to happen. The toughest quarterbacks physically that come to mind, Ben Roethlisberger, Brett Favre, they're not going to be running the middle. You can't turn those guys into running backs. I mean, it's not going to work.
They're not great running quarterbacks.
We're talking about
those were not great running quarterbacks, though. You're bringing up two guys that aren't great running quarterbacks.
Right, exactly. But
we're
Lamar Jackson and Cam Newton. Okay.
Right.
Lamar Jackson is at the top of his game right now, arguably the MVP to this point in the year. So let's focus on him instead of Cam Newton, who was a great running, quarterback, but isn't in the league at the moment, even though I anticipate he will be, before the season's over. But who knows? Okay. Lamar Jackson, there's so much you could do with him as a running back. Let's say Patrick Mahomes fell into the Baltimore Ravens' lap. They can't play both him and Lamar Jackson. And Patrick Mahomes, long-term, is the better quarterback, would be the better option in the long term. So you want to keep them both on the field at the same time. Lamar Jackson could do so much at running back. You need to work with him. Keep in mind there's the option play, where the running back is allowed to pass the ball downfield. You flip it to him. You know how dangerous Lamar Jackson would be? And Lamar Jackson wouldn't be a traditional running back cutting up the middle, unless there's an opening, of course. You're not going to turn him into a workhorse like you would, like with a Derrick Henry or John Riggins, and have him keep pounding the ball up the middle. I mean, no way. Lamar Jackson is great on the sweeps. You're saying, well, when he's flushed out of the pocket, that's when he becomes a good runner. Well, Lamar Jackson could cut to the left, and they're closing in on him. He could then change direction. He does that all the time as a quarterback. He could create absolute chaos in the backfield, and he can escape the rush. I recall Fran Tarkenton scrambling, escaping the rush. But the thing with Fran Tarkenton in the old days, Fran Tarkenton would be scrambling all over the place before he eventually passed the ball. He usually didn't run with the ball past the line of scrimmage.
Well, he was. Well, Jack, I got to correct you. He was the leading rushing quarterback in history before these other quarterbacks came up, just to let you know. So he did run
because the quarterbacks did not run with the ball. He was the leading rusher. Someone had to be the leading rusher, in that situation. But Lamar, but for the most part, you'll agree with me. Fran Tarkenton, when he scrambled,
he wanted to throw the ball.
He would throw the ball for the most part. Okay.
Yes.
Lamar Jackson, as a running back, would be able to scramble a la Fran Tarkenton.
As a running back.
No,
that's not what running backs do.
Wait, but he'd have two options. A running back.
Jack, Jack, we're talking about running backs. We're not talking about trick plays, all right?
You're saying could be part of it.
You're saying that as a running back, we're not talking about trick plays and wild cat formations. We're talking about an elite running back. Who's the elite?
I'm talking about playing the position.
Right. You said, well, we're saying an elite, a great running back. Well, listen, Lamar Jackson cannot run as a traditional running back, and you could put all the trick plays
up the middle as a traditional.
Well, that's what running backs
pound the ball. But Lamar Jackson can be highly successful, I feel, if they work with him as a running back, because he's lightning quick. He turns the corners quick. He can make adjustments.
Right, but he does that. But he does that, Jack, when they're not expecting the run, when they're passing the ball.
They always expect
90% of the time. 90% of the time, when Lamar Jackson goes for those big runs, is on a passing down when there's no linebackers, no safeties up near the line. He breaks the pocket. There's no one there, Jack. There's no one there. And he is good enough of a runner to break and make a move on a couple people. If he's on as a running back, now we're talking running back. We're not talking about trick plays. All right? We're talking about as a running back. If he's your starting running back on your team, he is not going to run for all those yards because the defense is expecting the run, and they have the formation in there to stop the run. We're not talking about trick plays only work once in a while, Jack. I'm sorry, they do. When he runs with the ball and he looks great is when he's in open field and he's on a safety or he's on a cornerback one-on-one. Of course he's going to look great because he's that great of an athlete, where a lot of quarterbacks can't do that. I get that.
Let me tell you the difference between Lamar Jackson and an Aaron Rodgers, for example, okay?
Yes.
Defenses want to go right after Aaron Rodgers. Go after him and get him.
Right.
Those same defenses, when they play against Lamar Jackson, the thought is, let's contain him. Don't let him get out of the pocket and start running. Once he starts running, we have big problems.
Right.
That fear Aaron Rodgers.
Aaron Rodgers has run for a couple touchdowns. In fact, your old quarterback from the Jets has scored more touchdowns than Lamar Jackson run with the ball. But that's beside the point. He's not the same caliber Jackson. There's no doubt about that. I'm not arguing that he's a great talent and he's a great runner. He could not line up as a running back, Jack, on running plays. You're talking about trick plays. You're saying an elite running back. You're not saying a trick play guy. You're not saying a utility guy. We're talking a great running back running against a defense.
And listen, he's a great running back. If you could pitch the ball out to Lamar Jackson as a running back, and he can throw the ball downfield that way, that's part of it. Okay,
that might be position. Well, maybe so, Jack, but that was Paul Hornung and Frank Gifford and all that stuff. That stuff does not work all the time.
They weren't saying Hornung was a little while.
We're talking about, Jack, a running back, not a trick play guy. We're talking about a running back right? We're talking. That's what the premise was.
I'm
it's
talking
not
about
good.
the position of running back. That's what I'm
Right, a position of running back. We're not talking about a trick play. If you were to say to me, Mac, could Lamar Jackson be effective, very effective, if we use him as a running back that could throw the ball every now and then?
Full time.
Probably. Not full time, because then he would have to carry the ball and running plays, Jack.
He'll break some big plays.
Jack, he might not, because the defense is not geared to stop him on a passing play as a running defense. They're out there for the pass. The quarterback, you seen Tom Brady pick up 20 yards on a run.
You hand the ball off to Lamar Jackson in the backfield on the sweep. Total chaos if he switches directions. He opens up the field.
So you're going to tell me he's a Barry Sanders, Jack? Come on. There's not even a comparison. You're saying that he can change direction. A lot of running backs can change direction. Lamar Jackson is not an elite running back. He's an elite running quarterback. That's two different things.
He's an elite running back right now disguised as a quarterback.
No, I don't believe that. I don't believe that, because he would be running with the ball on first down, and he doesn't do that, Jack. There's not that many designed runs for Lamar Jackson unless it is a trick play.
Hey, Don, we'll turn it over to you, because Mac isn't being open-minded about it.
I'm being real with you, Jack. What do you think?
All right. So as you know, if we're going to be talking running backs, my first answer is John Riggins.
Right.
But besides that, I think what you have here is a bigger question that sort of came on the periphery here that I don't know enough about football to answer, but I don't know who could, and I think you might want to bring it up on your football shows, and I believe Herschel Walker's coming on this week with you guys. I think this is a great question to ask a guy like Herschel Walker too. As I understand what Mac was saying in the beginning, and Jack heard this the same way. Maybe we misunderstood. But I believe Mac said if the quarterback was an elite runner, they would make him a running back. Right. And then Jack was saying if you're an elite quarterback, you'd never make somebody a running back. I think there's a question there. Like, what's more valuable? If somebody's really if you had this person, let's say Herschel Walker was also had the ability to be a great runner, a great passer, or Tom Brady also had the great ability to be a great runner. Would you make that player who could do both things the running back, or would you make that player the quarterback? That to me is a fascinating question that I would have no idea how a team would decide that.
Well, let me give you a quick example, Docker. Right? If Lamar Jackson was an elite quarterback, which he's not. All right, he is not a Brett Favre. He is not a Tom Brady. He is not a Aaron Rodgers.
Lamar Jackson was a league MVP before that.
As far as a throwing quarterback, he's not. Okay, he is not in their class. So if he was, what I'm trying to say is, if he was that great a running back, because he is not, as Jack said, if they could get Patrick Mahomes, if they had Aaron Rodgers on their team, Lamar Jackson probably would not be playing quarterback. But he wouldn't be playing running back either, because he's not built for that. There's a certain type of workout you do as a running back. There's a certain type of mentality you have as a running back. There's a certain type of reading blocks and run up the middle.
You teach him, Mac. He wouldn't do it overnight.
Jack, he's going to work with him. He said he would not play as a running back. He wants to be a quarterback. He's not going to do it, first of all. He would never do it. And why should he? He's effective as a running quarterback?
We're talking hypothetical. Right. We're not talking reality. No one's switching Lamar Jackson's position.
Right. But all I'm trying to say is that when Lamar Jackson runs with the ball right now, it's against a passing defense. It's not against a running defense. If it was a running defense and he was running with the ball, it would be a totally different situation. If you have a linebacker that's 240, could run a 4.5 on the field, watching you run with the ball and reading the blocks and coming up and hit you, it's a lot different than breaking out of the pocket and having nobody around you except a defensive back 10 yards away. It's a totally different
But the
situation.
defense would have to adjust to him somewhat if he was in the backfield.
No, they would just play a running defense on running downs, Jack.
Because there would be a threat of him passing, unlike other running backs.
Here you go again. We're saying would he be an elite running back? Totally different thing you're saying right now. And that's what I'm trying to say. Your defense, when you call a defense, it's based off certain keys. And with Lamar Jackson in the backfield on first down, you're expecting him to run with the ball. Or second and short, you're expecting him to run.
How about I change the wording from elite running back to effective running back? With
an effective running back that could throw the ball, I'd agree with you. Right?
Okay, so he could transition. He could be a good player. How about this? Could he be better than any other running back on the Giants currently, with the exception of Saquon Barkley?
I'm not sure, Jack. I'm not sure. I would have to see him run. I would have to see him run with the ball as a running back. It would be a totally different thing for him.
I think the key, is if you're going to make a guy a running back, then he has to be able to be a running back, right? If he has to be able to be effective as a runner who runs on running downs, right? Because if he's only going to be used on trick plays, if I'm the defense and I see, oh, you got Lamar Alexander or Lamar Jackson back there, well, then I'm saying, okay, obviously I have to be ready for a trick play because he's not just going to get the ball handed off and run through the gut and try to get some yardage that way. He's only going to sweep out either way, or he's going to be doing some type of trick play. The only way to combat that is to say that, oh, this guy can run on us like a real running back can, and he can also do something different. And I think the question is, can these guys actually be a running back who runs like a real running back? And I guess the answer is no.
The big example I'll tell you, Tim Tebow was a great running back that threw the ball, right? Carlos brought that up earlier. Tim Tebow was one of the greatest college football players in history. He's up there. He's won the Heisman Trophy. He won national championships. He could run with the ball, but he couldn't throw it. He couldn't throw the ball effectively. So Lamar Jackson and Tim Tebow are two different people. Lamar Jackson played quarterback and threw the ball in college. He can run like Cam Newton did. He can. But when you have somebody that can do something really well, like a Lamar Jackson, that can throw the ball deep, and he is more accurate than people think. But when you break the pocket, that dude's awesome, like a Tim Tebow probably would have been, or like a Kyle Murray is right now. Lamar Jackson is just better than them, and it's just two different positions. And I hate to say you had to play it or you had to. I was a quarterback that ran with the ball a lot. I had a good arm, but I ran with the ball a lot. I ran option series. That's what I ran, an option game plan. So I ran with the ball quite a bit. But I'm not a great running back. No way. I was lucky because I ran the option series, and it was kind of a trick, will fool you kind of thing. I couldn't be a running back. There's no way I could take that punishment at that age. And I know it's a very small, me here, Lamar Jackson there, but the principle is the same, guys. If you're a running back, your mentality, your physical build, what you do, when you get hit, do you go down by a big guy, not by a guy that's smaller than you? In fact, Lamar Jackson, in a lot of cases, these guys are smaller than he is, and he's a tremendous athlete. But I mean, that's all I'm saying is that it's a totally different.
Doc had a good suggestion, but we don't have to wait with Herschel Walker because he's not on the Mac and Jack show. Jim Jeffcoat tomorrow morning.
Yeah, there you go.
Isn't Herschel coming on the Mac and Jack show next week?
But you want to know something?
No,
Jim Jeffcoat was a great defensive lineman, so he's used to tackling running backs and quarterbacks all the time. So I'd be curious his take, and he did kind of say something a little bit revealing. Years ago, there was a great NFL running quarterback, Randall Cunningham, and he said it's easier to contain him. It's easier to play against him than it was Dan Marino, because Dan Marino had such a quick release. They just couldn't get to him because he, got rid of the ball so quickly. But with Randall Cunningham, there were maybe ways to contain him. So maybe Jeffcoat might subscribe to your argument, Mac, But the question's going to be, but could Lamar Jackson be an effective NFL running back? Okay, that's really the question. Not whether he could be a great one. Could he be a good one? Maybe going forward. I may have posed the question as elite, maybe not elite, but certainly I think he could be good in that position with all the things he could do with him because he is such a great natural runner right now.
Let me throw one more thing in there. There will be a guy who probably can do it, and there will be a guy who probably does it. Just like if you had asked us all 3 years ago, can anybody be a pitcher and an effective hitter in Major League Baseball? Everybody would have said, no, that's ridiculous. Babe Ruth did it. That was 100 years ago. Nobody can do that. And then all of a sudden, Shohei Ohtani shows up, right? Yeah. One of the great things about humans and sports and which keeps our interest and makes us all exciting is the fact that there comes down the pike people who transcend the sport and do things that nobody ever thought were possible. And all of a sudden that could happen, right? He could be playing right now in some Pee Wee league somewhere, and then all of a sudden,
anything's possible.
And that's what makes it exciting. If
you think about it, the closest thing to what Jack is saying is Paul Hornung. All right, he was a great quarterback in college. He came in, became a very effective running back for the Green Bay Packers. I mean, that's as close as I can get.
It was a different era. Doc said something that's very interesting that I've thought about. Not a lot, but I have thought about it. And it always makes sense to me, but teams, rarely try it. There are a number of outfielders in the Major League today with, great arms. I mean, some I might not realize what a great arm they have. And I understand the throw from the outfield isn't the same as the pitching mound. But the bottom line, a great arm is a great arm. And I remember going to Yankee game as a kid and Rocky Calavito in outfield. It was pitching. You could convert certain of these outfielders, I'm sure, into pitchers. Who's to say that Roberto Clemente couldn't have been a great pitcher had he bought in and had they worked hard with him? Okay.
Yeah, sure.
You've got a number of players, position players who would solve the pitching dilemma. It would take time. There's the control factor, the temperament, the mechanics. I mean, I'm sure it's out there.
It's a different. Pitching is different, right? But my bigger point is, and I think Jack is saying that, is teams, players, managers. Time changes a lot of these things. We have this perception or these perspectives that this can't happen, and then all of a sudden a transcendent player comes and all of a sudden it does, and that's what makes it exciting, and that's what makes those players exciting. And so we don't have we don't have guys who are playing offense and defense in the NFL, right? That like they
not anymore.
All of a sudden, right? But somebody might come back and do it. Maybe you see a guy like a Deion Sanders become an effective wide receiver and a cornerback, and they use them interchangeably or things like that. I mean, that's what makes it exciting is things come and the way we look at it.
The only problem with that, I think Ohtani said he either do that or he wouldn't play. He either got to pitch and I don't think a lot of players with that type of money and teams with that type of money like that, because there's more of a chance, of course, of them getting hurt and more of a chance of them losing a great pitcher or a great hitter or whatever the case may be. So I think there's a lot of players that can do it. In fact, I think most of the players in the Major League Baseball probably were the Little League pitcher of the year. I mean, I bet that's where they were. Shortstops played.
Right. That's where
But guys, isn't that one of the more entertaining things in baseball when you bring in a position player for mop-up time? I think it's entertaining, at least as a fan, to watch their soft pitching and a lot of times the batters aren't effective. But it's
tough when he threw a knuckleball, right? Wade went out there, threw a knuckleball a couple of times.
I don't know whether you guys remember Steve Hamilton in the Foley floater. He would lob the ball, right? So high in the air. And one of the Indian players, I think, popped out, and then he got on his hands and knees and crawled back to the dugout. I mean, that was a lot of fun, and they had that gimmick going on for a little while during the season, the Foley floater. But all the batter has to do is not swing, and how do you call that a strike?
You got to be able to throw it for a strike.
You'd be surprised. Folks, we were going to get to should the infield fly rule be abolished. We don't have enough time. Jack, we'll get to it next. Let's do that next week because I got a few things to say on that. So remember, mark that down. We'll do that next week. Folks, I want to thank you for tuning into the Mac and Jack Debate Show. Thanks to Doc for coming on with us again and Brett Kell for stopping in. Back tomorrow again, the big football show. Jim Jeffcoat, Robert Butler, Keith Angle, and the Philly Sports Guy as we cover the NFL tomorrow. Thanks for coming in. Have a great Saturday night, and we'll see you tomorrow. And hope your teams win.